Good morning, July the 7th, 11:19 in the morning as we record this program. It's the All 32. He is Will Parkinson. I'm Mike Giardi. Of course, we are a proud member, partner of the CLNS Media Network, and we are brought to you by Prizepicks, North America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Download today. Use the code CLNS to get 50 off your first 5. Prizepicks, play your game. So we thought, as we get real close to training camp, that we would rate the quarterbacks. Everybody's been doing it. We're going to go from 32 to 1. These are the starting quarterbacks or the assumed starting quarterbacks for the upcoming season. And I will tell you this right away. We both believe that Cam Ward will start for Tennessee, the #1 overall pick, and Tyler Shough, likely the odds-on favorite to start New Orleans. We're not rating them. They are 31 and 32 just because we have no evidence of them in the National Football League. Although, again, we've heard good things about both guys, and certainly we're impressed, especially by Shough down at the Senior Bowl. But so we're not going to touch them. We're going to do this in 2 parts. We're going to do 30 through 16 for part 1, and part 2, of course, 15 to 1. That'll be later this week. Any thoughts, just big picture, Will, on the quarterbacks before we dive into the rankings?
Yeah, I feel like, and we've talked about this isn't something new, and I think there's been a trend for a while. I mean, I think there was this golden age of, maybe not, people might disagree with this, but I think maybe 98 through 2010, 2011, really peak years of again, Brady obviously played for another freaking 1,000 years, but and Rodgers has played on for a while, but going from that Favre, era, winning a bunch of MVPs, into Brady, Peyton, Rodgers, Breeze, Rivers, Eli, it was just not the Eli's, Big Ben, Matt, there was just so many different, I don't know, the era of those quarterbacks in a league where it was really hard to score points with the rules. Kurt Warner MVPs in there. There's a bunch of different guys. Obviously, the list can go on, and maybe one day we'll do an episode of our favorite quarterback seasons or MVP seasons during the summer. But I feel like I look at this list, and similar to how we did in positional groups and things like that, there's the elite of the elite guys, and then there's a group of 12 to 15 guys that on any given Sunday could be the 5th best quarterback in the league, 6th best quarterback in the league. Then there's other Sundays where I'm like, these guys are pretty average. And then there's a bunch of young guys. So it's an interesting list for sure. I think a lot of the guys we'll get into right away are very familiar names in a lot of ways of, this is their 3rd, 4th, 5th stop, and they've been starters for a while now. We kind of know what to expect. They're a young guy, and, like an Anthony Richardson, who I'm sure we'll talk to about in a second, where I don't even know if he's really going to start, right? So there's a lot there.
Yeah, there really is. It's interesting. You mentioned sort of the group beyond tier 1, tier 2, if you want to call it, because I think there's those tiers are sort of 3-4 guys here, 3-4 guys here. It's that middle tier you're talking about, where there's as I was doing the rankings, that was by far and away the hardest part for me. It was I've seen this guy be the 8th or 9th best quarterback in the league, and then I've seen him be the 25th best quarterback in the league the following week, and then do it again the following. It's so there's some consistency issues there that sort of, I think, pigeonhole some of those guys in the middle group. Let's just get this thing started. I'll give you my 30 through 25, if you will. Joe Flacco is number 30. There's nothing to be said. Likely the starter for Cleveland when they break camp. However, Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, there's Kenny Pickett there. It's almost no chance that he goes wire to wire. I've already said enough about Cleveland with Joe Flacco. At 29, I have Russell Wilson. His first 2 starts last year after he took over for Justin Fields against the Jets and Giants, really nice, kind of throwback. Oh, look at, maybe they found something here. Maybe Russell fits this system with Arthur Smith. Maybe we understand why they were so bullish on him. He's going to be the starter when he's finally healthy. And then after that, other than one throwback performance against Cincinnati a few weeks later, which, let's face it, every quarterback had a throwback performance against Cincinnati's defense last year. He looked like the same guy he did in Denver. He looked like the same guy he did at the tail end of Seattle. He's not washed, but he's not Russell. He's a guy that he's filling shoes until Jackson Dart is ready to go. Then I had Daniel Jones / Anthony Richardson, number 28. Just a reminder for folks, Richardson's played 15 games over 2 seasons after being a top 5 pick. Last year, in 11 games, 264 attempts, completed just 47% of his passes. And he actually lit up the Patriots in that one performance. You take that away. Huh, good Lord. Hate to do this to you, Will. At 27, I have Justin Fields. I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit. At 26, I have Bryce Young. Second half of the season last year was nice. Last 10 games, passer rating of 88.9, 2,100 yards passing, 15 TDs, 6 picks. They got him Tet in the first round, so now he has another big target receiver. We know they've invested money in their offensive line. Is he ready to take the next step? And just before we get on, this is a guy I think we're going to argue about where I have him rated. Sam Darnold at number 25. My thing about Sam Darnold is he was awesome last year, right? He was in the conversation for MVP, flamed out the final 2 games, as did sort of Minnesota. I think we know what he is. And I think there is, maybe you could make the argument that he could be in that tier 3 I was talking about. I just mentioned sort of the uneven performance. But where I'm at with him is I'm sort of betting on a few of these younger guys to take a step forward this year. And I feel like I don't know that I'm going to get that from Sam again. He's out of the cocoon of the Kevin O'Connell offense. Clint Kubiak, we don't know if he's a good coordinator or not. So that's what I had from 30 through 25. Where you got?
Yeah, I don't really have many differences transparently in the bottom half, 30 through 25. I think if we were tiering this list, this would be the batch of, volatile veteran, placeholders, whatever you want to call it, guys. Like there's the Fields, Darnold, Bryce Young camp where it's like, hey, they can easily be next year or midseason. They could be in the teens. They're also going to be not starter, not Sam, but, Bryce Young, it's his year 3, and it's got to click for more than just the back half of meaningless football. Yep. And, for Fields, like this is the last shot. This was similar to Darnold last year, team that feels like the roster is good enough to do something. Maybe they're an underrated team going into the year and they have a quarterback who's a former top 10 pick that, has all the talent, and we've seen these flashes, and he had the time to sit, and the whole, you do the whole argument, which we've talked about before. 30, I had Joe Flacco as well. I still think Dylan Gabriel will be the day 1 starter. I don't have any evidence to tell you that a 5'9.5" quarterback that's a lefty that's played a gazillion years in college is going to be able to make it. I don't know if long-term he's going to be a good player, but I just feel like we'll see in camp. They'll be like, I kind of want the fan base to have something to get excited about. Oh, he's going to run out, he's going to run Stefanski's offense well. They do trust Flacco. Obviously, we saw it a couple of years ago. So Flacco I put there. I put, Jones Richardson at 29. I have Russ at 28. I have Fields also at 27. I think there's an argument to be made if Fields plays just in the 21st best or 20th best. That's kind of what the Jets are really asking for. I don't think they're asking for him to be. Can you be a little better than expected? Can you be a little more last year, Fields?
Right. Well, I mean, we had that conversation, right, for multiple years, it seems like, where
for 4
the Jets just get competent quarterback play. And, there were points, obviously, that Aaron did give him some of that last year. I was looking back on Fields. Now, it's 44 starts he's made over the 4 seasons. Last year, 65.8 completion percentage in his 161 attempts.
He's completed 66% over 17 games. We're having a very different conversation about Justin Fields.
100%. Also, by the way, my memory was jogged when I saw the numbers again, but his second year in the league, he finished 10th in the MVP voting.
Yeah, because there was the whole controversial, if I'm not mistaken, there was the whole controversial, one of the Bears reporters or whatever, the Bears media guys voted for him for MVP, and everyone was pissed. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that was either a Rodgers MVP. It might have been a Rodgers MVP, I think, right? You said 2022?
2022, yeah.
Yeah, it was a Rodgers MVP, and or no, maybe it wasn't. There was something going on. I remember there was a whole controversy of Rodgers being very angry. We'll have to look this up because
I'll give it a quick Google.
I think he had 1,000 yards rushing that year, though.
1,100 yards rushing. So that was and this is the thing we've also talked about with him, right? Is I know they're talking about letting him play quarterback, be a quarterback first, but his superpower is his running ability and his physicality. I mean, he has a big arm, don't get me wrong, but that's the thing that he's done best in the league. So to me, if he throws for 3,100 to 3,300 yards, somewhere in that neighborhood, but also rushes for 800, then you're kind of cooking with gas. Then to your point, now we're talking about a quarterback who's probably in the teens, even if it's 18, 19, he's there as opposed to being at the bottom. And that, with their defense, should make a big difference.
Yeah. So 27, I had Fields. 26, I had JJ McCarthy. I did this because I think similar. I think JJ will be playing better in this. But it's hard for me to sit there personally and put him any higher because I've quite literally never seen him play football in a meaningful NFL game. And until then, I just think my rule of thumb is always like, you got to do it for more than a year to get, you'll see where I have Jaden Daniels. He's probably a little lower than he should be. But it's just because I did this with CJ last year. I want to see more than 1 year.
Yep.
Because, the tape and adjustments and some guys come out and that's who they are. Bo Nix was who we, thought. Is he better than that? Is he worse? How it'll shake out. So I had him at 26 and then 25. I struggled here because I wanted to put Caleb Williams, but I ended up putting Bryce Young. Caleb. We'll talk about Caleb in a second.
Yep.
Bryce Young, I think similar to you, I thought he improved a lot in the back half of the year. And I thought, really bad situation, bad staff, the whole thing. And then the beginning of the last year was terrible. But I wonder with Bryce, what's the ceiling at this point? Because I think he's a starter in the league. I think we saw enough last year to say, hey, like he should be the 17-game starter this year. And you'll go from there. And he'll probably get another year after that, just the way that, what they gave up and all that stuff. But is his ceiling like the 14th best quarterback in the league? Is that, is his ceiling average Gino? I don't know. Like I just have struggled where he's going to fit in long term. So I had Bryce at 25. So to recap, I went Flacco / Shador and Dylan Gabriel and Kenny Pickett. Then the Colts situation. I think the Colts and the Browns have the two worst quarterback situations in the league, both for the future and present. I don't see where you get excited about either situation. And then, obviously we had Field slotted in 27, Russ at 28. We don't have to really talk too much about Russ. And then I went JJ McCarthy and Bryce Young at 25.
All right. So here I go from 24 to a 20. I have Michael Penix 24th. Looking back on it, I should have had Sam Darnold one spot higher than him. Okay, whatever. You got my point. Again, just 3 starts, 2 overtime losses, produced points, looked pretty good. I like what they have around him. We've talked about this with London, who's, again, not my favorite kind of receiver, but he's very productive. Darnell Mooney, Bijan, obviously, outstanding running back. So there's enough there that he should be pretty good this year. I had J.J. McCarthy, and this is – okay, so you're right. I said no Ward and no Shough because we haven't seen him play. Well, we only saw him play one preseason game. This is a bet on I think I like his physical talent, but it's a bet on the scheme, the pixie dust that's sprinkled on him by Kevin O'Connell, and then obviously the talent to surround him, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, Aaron Jones, on and on it goes. Like, I just like that group, and I really enjoy their offensive line, like what they put together there. At 22, I have Caleb Williams. And, we've talked about Caleb when we did sort of we're looking at the best case, worst case scenarios for these young quarterbacks. And some of his numbers last year were pretty good. He's in a better situation now, right? It's stability, a new head coach from the offensive tree, a new head coach that worked wonders with, and granted, a lot of talent with Detroit. So he doesn't have the same type of talent here in Chicago, but he's going to push Caleb hard. I think you made a great point when we were doing best case, worst case scenarios is you want to see him take more chances than he did last year. Sometimes you just got to let it go, try to find that tight window and live with it. But does it work? Does it not work? He's got some good pieces around him. At 21, I have Aaron Rodgers. Look, flashes last year where he shows you like he's capable of being a 15th best quarterback in the league. And we obviously know he's still got the arm. He doesn't want to push it as much because he doesn't want to get hit. They've built a team to win for now. I don't know that they're going to win now, but that's the team that they built. He's got DK. They just traded for Jonnu Smith. Obviously, Freiermuth is there as well. So there are pieces in place for him. And at 20, I have Bo Nix. It was interesting. I was kind of going back as I was doing my research for this. It got off to a bad start last year. Actually, the first year that Sean Payton was there as well, bad start. And he's urging this idea of a faster start. But then when you start to put the pieces together of what he's talking about and then some of the players talking about Bo Nix, they're like, it's a different Bo this year. Last year he came in intent on proving that I'm going to be the first round pick and like I'm going to be able to do what Sean wants me to do. I'm going to run this team, but I'm not stepping on any toes. Now, Bo Nix is comfortable. Second year in the system will grow now. He's smart enough to handle it. And it's like they said, you're seeing sort of the personality of Bo, and I think that's a good thing, like getting more confident, more loose, comfortable in your scenario. And, look, last year, 3,700 yards and 29 touchdowns.
Yeah.
That's not, again, this might be what he is. He's the best of what he is, or 5% better than this. But right now, good marriage between head coach and quarterback. So I had Bo Nix at 20.
Yeah, I'll start off, 24. I have Michael Penix. I think similar things to you. I thought I saw some flashes, but you're going to have to see more. I mean, he didn't play that much. So it's like, again, a lot of projection with some of these young guys. I think, even when I'll get to Drake Maye in pretty short order here. Like, I just want to see a full season. And I think 1 year, it's hard for me to like push them over guys that, eventually I'll get to the Tuas and Dak and Trevor Lawrence of the world where like, on any given Sunday, like those guys might be better than these guys, but it's just seeing it more. Maybe it's a bad way of thinking, but it's the way I kind of, approach, ranking the quarterbacks. I had Caleb at 23. Again, if Caleb stays at 23, I think the Bears are going to be pretty disappointed going into year 3.
I will too.
But I think there's every argument to be made. He should at least be in the teens, and then maybe the year 3 is the year he takes the big jump from 16 to 8. Right. And then it's finally starting to work. But I think for them, they want to get him into can he be in that middle pack where, at least next year going into the following year with the former number 1 picks and guys like Kyler and Trevor and those other guys. Again, I went kind of back to back with a lot of these young guys. I had Drake Maye at 22. I wanted to put him higher. I said it, we've said it so many times talking about him. Can he just kind of even out some of there are some flashes, whether it's running the football, I always come back to it that the first half in Buffalo, I think any Patriots fan is like, can we get that for, most of the season? That'll be fantastic. I also feel like they were so bad last year. So it is like masked. Some of those mistakes kind of were prone to happen, but like they really won one game with him as like the real starter. And, there was other games where like I thought, Milton, obviously that game was whatever. We don't want to compare it to that. But like the Chargers game a couple weeks before where probably cost Rod Mayo his job. Drake gets hurt. He didn't look very good. Like there's too many times last year where I feel like I need to see it a little bit more before I start putting him a little higher. But again, I think 22 is very respectable. He's over pretty much everybody else in his class. I also had Rodgers at 21. I sound like I'm being a hater here, but I just felt like he played like an average quarterback last year. There was some really good times. I thought there were some big games. We saw it. There was, Houston game in the second. Rodgers right now can play as good of a half as anybody in the league. But for 4 quarters, you very rarely see a 4 quarters Rodgers performance. Even Jacksonville. Think about, by the way, the teams I'm naming that he played really well against. Miami in week 18. Again, Houston, he had a good half against Minnesota. But the first half was terrible. He did really good, the Patriots week 3. That was the best Rodgers looked all year, and it's the healthiest he looked. So mine's more of he probably is really the 15th best quarterback, but I can't count on Rodgers to be healthy for 17 games anymore. So he's getting penalized here. Like, it's just the reality. I actually have Kyler at 20. I just don't really get it. Like, I got to be honest. I know he played better last year, and there was a lot of improvements, but they kind of finished up being a pretty average team, if not below average, and Kyler kind of finished up being an average quarterback. Like, and this isn't like year 2 Kyler or year 4. We're deep, and then we're post knee. We're multiple years post knee now. Kind of think he's just somewhere in the 16th to 20th best quarterback range, and he's a guy who makes a lot of money. And I think he can win some games, but yeah, I'm gonna get I'll get to Bo in a second. Obviously, he's right after this, so it's not anything crazy, but I just, for me, I struggle with Kyler. I don't really know him and Trevor are the 2 guys to me that I don't really know what to do with them because the numbers and the eye test and what their performance has been over a long period of time now doesn't really strike me as guys that are top 10 guys. I can't get there.
Yeah, I have Drake and Kyler a little higher, and we'll get into that in just a second. But first, Prizepicks is the best place to get real money sports action. Over 10 million members, billions of dollars in award-winning. Prizepicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least two players, up to six, for a shot to win 2,000. That's right, 2,000 times your cash. And you cross sports now, right? Or you can just go heavy. You got baseball going on, but obviously the women's basketball, there's soccer stuff. There's plenty of things that you can get into. NASCAR, whatever you're into, you can do it. You can just pick them, loop them together. Again, as always, be smart. Only put down what you are willing to lose. So just download the app today. Use the code CLNS to get $50 off your first $5. Again, download the app. Use the code CLNS to get $50 off your first $5. Prizepicks runs your game. All right, so I'll get to it now as we wrap up the first part of this two-part series on the quarterbacks. At number 19, I have Drake Maye. 15 touchdowns, 10 picks, 9 fumbles last year. So we talked about sort of as you mentioned just a short time ago, some of his mistakes were masked because they were so bad, and some of his mistakes were just like, hey, we are bad, so you're hoping that it was sort of just wing it. Just, hey, I got to make a play, and if I'm coached better, if we're a better football team, I'm going to understand, throw the ball away, take the 2-yard sack, whatever the case may be. Don't put yourself in harm's way. Don't put the football in harm's way. I was talking to someone, and I'm actually going to write this for Boston Sports Journal when I do the quarterback preview, positional previews as we get ready for training camp. I talked to 3 different defensive coordinators that played against the Patriots. 2 of them will see him again this year. And I asked one of them sort of how he viewed their first experience with Maye. And he said, well, we went into the game thinking he's a rookie with all this physical talent, but we don't know that he can solve problems yet. And that's not uncommon, right? For a young quarterback making, whatever. He was in the single digits in starts when they had their first meeting. And I said, okay, so then what happened after? Like, what did you see after the game? What was your view? And he said exactly the same going in, that physically he's a little bit better than he thought he was, but that we gave him some problems that he wasn't able to solve. And he thought that Alex Van Pelt, their offensive coordinator last year, did a pretty good job with Drake. And I think we talked about that during the course of the year. If anybody on that staff had made a case to at least come back when we thought that they were going to remain, it was him. But that now he has Josh, and obviously Josh has 20-something years of offensive coordinator and head coaching experience, and maybe he will sort of unlock that part of Drake's brain and allow him to be more of a problem solver this year than he was. And his point was, if he becomes more of a problem solver, and again, we have no idea whether he can or not. Based on what I had heard about him and talking to people from North Carolina, they feel he has that in his game and showed some of that at North Carolina. But if they can unlock that part of his brain, then ranking him 19th will be a mistake, and he'll be much higher than that. Or what we find out is that gunslinger mentality, right, that he has embraced and says, that's part of who I am. I'm a playmaker. I want to make plays. That maybe that's just let's call it the Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield. Baker always, especially early on, like, I'm just going to make throws. Like, I believe I can get the ball there, and maybe Drake feels the same way. So that's sort of where I am with Drake. At 18, I had Trevor Lawrence. And again, you could tell me at the end of the year with Liam Cohen that Trevor Lawrence is a top 10 quarterback. And he's not a bust. I've heard that term thrown around. He hasn't been the generational prospect that when he was drafted number 1 that we were promised. Remember, he was the cleanest, best quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck. That was the buzz on him. And I don't think anybody who watched him debated that. It's been sort of roller coastery in Jacksonville. Obviously, the Urban Meyer season, throw it away. Real good bounce back with Peterson, but then that sort of fell off. And now he's on his 3rd coach. He's got weapons. He's got Brian Thomas, who was awesome last year. He obviously has Hunter now, Travis Hunter, as he tries to play both ways. But he played just 10 games last year. The injuries have been a bit of a problem for him. Lowest completion percentage since his rookie year, just 11 touchdowns, 7 picks. At 17, I have Tua. Again, games played is a problem. 11 last year. He's obviously had, because of the concussions, he's missed a lot of time. Last year, 72% completion percentage, His yards per attempt, though, were down from 8.9 in his first year with Mike McDaniel when he wasn't, he actually had, I think he finished same thing, 9th or 10th in MVP voting, to last year at 7.2. Part of that maybe by design, right? Get rid of the ball quicker, protect your quarterback. I just don't know if there's any more there now. Like I think this is what he is. I think he's best when he is getting the ball out quickly, on time, throwing to a spot, letting the receiver do the rest. There's nothing wrong with that. You can win football games with that. I don't know that you can win a championship. I have Tua 17th. And lastly, I had Kyler at 16. And I understand where you're coming from. I thought he was better last year than I remember him being in some time. And I guess what I'm banking on is the physical gifts in the system again for another year with Gannon and Petzig as the offensive coordinator, that at the very least he's average, but there's potential for more. Again, he was the number 1 overall pick and not a super strong draft for quarterbacks. And he sort of played like that. Like he's had his moments where he's awesome. He's fun to watch at times. And then he has other times where you're like, I don't know what he's doing. When is it going to get better? And to me, that feels like the 16th best quarterback in the league.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, last year was the first time he's played 17 games in his career. Obviously, first couple of years in the league, obviously played the full season, but had gone 2021 through 2023, max of 14 starts, 11-8. Completion percentage was really high last year. That was great. Yardage was up. That was all awesome. I just still feel like, I don't know. He was good last year.
He hasn't when he is on, when he's right, when he is running around making plays, his arm is ridiculous, right? Like,
yeah,
that's tantalizing. That is like top 10 quarterback talent. He just hasn't put it together. And now we're how many years into it? 5? So it's like
6 years.
Yeah.
We're going into year 7. That's what I'm saying. And then
you probably are what you are at this point.
Yeah. No, look, I get it. I have Darnold at 19. I'm a little higher on him. I feel like last year was really good. And I feel like Sam has the potential to, I don't love the way the Seahawks are built. It's very confusing. It feels like they have a bunch of corners and a bunch of slot receivers, and then everything else in that roster I'm a little perplexed about potentially. Sam has to kind of just play within himself, but if you give Sam time, I know you say that with any quarterback, but we saw Sam last year, he was putting up serious numbers. It wasn't and again, I know O'Connell gets a lot of credit, but I also feel like Sam got the year with Kyle. He definitely did not have a good 3-week stretch there to end the season, or 2-week stretch to end the season. But I had him at 19. I had Bo Nix at 18. So pretty similar to you, on most of these guys. I think we're kind of, in lockstep there. You talked enough about Bo in the last couple of weeks. I had Trevor at at 17. Pretty much similar to you. I feel like Trevor is, him being on the field is not a given. And I don't remember that ever being – that kind of happened with Sam too when he was with New York, where he took a lot of shots early on. He wanted to prove, I'm tough. I'm going to stand in the pocket, and kind of has backfired a bit. Look, we saw the hit last year. That's not Trevor's fault. Although, somehow there's reporters in our industry that blamed him for sliding late. Interesting tactic, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
If you know on that one. But again, he's 22-38 as a starter, and he's 69 touchdowns, 46 picks. Completion percentage was way down last year. Even if he had played the full season, I don't know that the numbers would have looked great. He had the best year in 2022 he had, and they obviously won the playoff game, and and the whole thing, and it kind of really. I've talked so much about this with you, but if Herbert wins that playoff game and they don't choke. Mm-hmm. Trevor's now the guy at no playoff wins through 4 years. He's the golden goose and the whole thing. And then Herbert doesn't have the stigma of he can't win a big game. And we're just talking about 2 totally different careers in terms of how they're talked about in terms of the flaws. I also had Tua, I guess 16th there. Transparently, I'm, in our next episode, I'll get right away to the, first guy on the list. I had thoughts of Brock Purdy at 16. I think he is a really solid average NFL starter with really good support. And when he's not he's not as bad as some people make him out to be, not as good. And we'll talk about it more next episode. But just with Tua, I think he's at times can play. He's a Pro Bowl-ish level quarterback. and again, we talked about this, I think, in the last episode. Pro Bowl at quarterback is not actually really necessarily doesn't mean much in today's NFL. There's so many replacements and the way that everything's structured, et cetera. I just feel like, again, durability with, Trevor, with Tua, with some of these guys at this, in this part of that kind of, meat and potatoes of where the NFL really is. Kirk Cousins was a starter. He'd find his way into this section. There's just a lot of guys. The proverbial Joe Flacco section, that's kind of where we land on these guys. Again, I'm probably higher on Darnold, and you're a little higher on Kyler, but everything else kind of similar. Where we're at.
It's funny that you say that thing about the durability factor, because if I look at it now, Kyler, as you mentioned, finally played 17 games, so he's always had that on him. Tua consistently, missing games. Trevor has struggled to stay healthy the last few years, and then Drake was my 19th. You had him at 21, 22, whatever it was. Yeah. He missed a couple games or parts of games last year because of the putting his body at risk and getting, the call down and concussion. So all those guys have that on their resume. Drake's resume is shorter than the rest of them, but it's something to monitor going forward, because if you're not out there, you can't be what we think you might be. All right. For those listening to the show, we ask you to subscribe to the podcast, like, and leave a review. And for those watching the show on CLNS, go ahead, hit the like button, subscribe to the Patriots Press Pass YouTube channel, where you can find our show and a lot of other great Patriots and league content. Also, please make sure to turn on your notifications so you know the instant a new video drops. That is going to put a wrap on part 1 of the quarterback rankings. Part 2, from 15 to number 1. Curious to see, because we've had some conversations where I think you and I might be in a different place in terms of our top tier, but we'll see. We'll see what's going to happen there. So be sure and join us later in the week. But we appreciate you watching, and we'll talk to you later.